Penn State is poised to be a better football team in 2024. However, will that translate into a better record?
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, this is the toughest schedule in recent memory for Penn State football. So does that mean that a 10-2 season would be a disappointment? This is Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm your host, Zach Seyko, and thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. And today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is why I am a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. And it's been a minute, but let's welcome them back as we're going to make some early season predictions here at the end of April, beginning of May, and that is Matty Fresh. And wow, the Springball Boulevard show, where you can find it on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I just got to say that I am extremely impressed with the quality of coverage that is going towards the UFL. If you want to watch, the football season never dies, and it certainly doesn't die over with Matty Fresh's coverage. But you're going to step away from the pro side of it and help me out with the college predictions here, Matt. And I mean, I'll start it off. I think this is a 10-2 team again. And I know what everyone's thinking. Here we go, 10-2, a loss to Ohio State. Yes, but under the circumstances, that's actually a step forward for this Penn State team.
Well, appreciate you having me back on, Zach. I know it's been a little bit. I love Locked On. I love coming on. It's my favorite Penn State podcast, and
appreciate it.
I try to listen daily. Here I am stalling because I really don't want to give my prediction for the season. You haven't really given me that much time to think about it, but yeah, at the surface, like getting rid of Michigan and not having to play Ohio State and Michigan for the first time since 2014, probably. I don't think there's ever been a season.
That's weird.
Franklin.
It's weird.
Yeah, right. I'm pretty sure that's the first time in 10 years that's happening. Also, opening Big Ten play at home. Wow, the first time that's happened in like 9 years. So it is a tough schedule. I'm a little lower on the Pac-12 side than some others. I think that the Pac-12 schools will be very disappointing this season in this conference. But, yeah, I mean, very manageable non-con compared to what some of the other schools like Michigan is going up against with Texas. I think Wisconsin has Alabama.
Yeah, that's unusual, too. So, it's usually the other way around. Michigan has the gauntlet of Hawaii and Austin Peay, and Penn State's usually incorporating an Auburn and a West Virginia in this case. But now Jim Harbaugh's gone, and the consequences are right in front of Sharon Moore. But I'm at 10-2. I'll explain why. I mean, do you have a record at this point, or what's kind of your range of how? I can't see them finishing better than 10-2.
Well, I think week 1 odds dropped today. I was checking out. I was checking out FanDuel, and I saw that the 12.5 point spread. Obviously, West Virginia, sort of 8-4 last year. I mean, they expected, I think, less out of that program. I think they probably expected under 500. So that's pretty respectable. I would say I didn't really look at the Mountaineers too much, but trying to gauge like where you could probably look at some championship futures as well. I don't know if you know like what a price is for Penn State to win the Big Ten right now, or maybe with no divisions. I was looking at over under win totals, and I didn't get a chance to see Penn State's, but I don't want to give a record. What I will say is I think over 9.5 would be a safe play for wins. I think obviously the trips to USC and Wisconsin and the struggles that this program has had off of a bye week could pose some problems. But Washington and UCLA don't really scare me maybe as much as some others. Obviously, this season will have its ups and downs with injuries and momentum and whatnot, and hopefully the same quarterback all 12 games. But yeah, I would be okay right now on the over 9.5 wins for Penn State.
If you want some prices, courtesy of the official sportsbook of Locked On, Penn State is 2,200 to win the national championship. And then for the Big Ten conference spot, Penn State is the third most likely, according to FanDuel, at plus 550. So there are your odds. Ohio State and Oregon are two favorites, and that's when. So I'm glad you brought that up, Matt.
Okay.
Washington, UCLA, USC don't necessarily scare me from team caliber, right? Skill, talent. I think Penn State is more talented than all of those teams. I think they're right underneath Oregon. And then there is a gap with Ohio State. Let's just be honest. Ohio State they would have had everyone saying that, oh, there's a development issue, that they didn't have enough draft picks, because they all came back. All of those guys that would have been first rounders, second, third rounders, all came back. So that's pretty scary for Penn State when they go take on the Buckeyes. Again, a lot of things could change. I'm glad that game's at home as opposed to being on the road. But when I look at the games that they could hypothetically lose, that stretch in the middle of the season, not only that 5-game stretch of where they're facing UCLA, Ohio State, Washington, USC, Wisconsin in a jumbled order there, but when they go on the road back to back like that, where it's USC for the first time playing out in Southern Cal in the regular season, you don't have a month to prepare for that. You got to prepare for that in a week. You go out to Southern Cal, you do have the bye week, and then you're back on the road against Wisconsin. That is an awful situation, and I fully expect Penn State to drop at least one of those. There's the chance it could be two, because this has never been done. There is no data to back this up. I would think that they lose to Southern Cal, bounce back against Wisconsin because they do have that bye week, but those are going to be very tough matchups. And I know what I said about UCLA, but I'm talking about the environment. You have to fly 6 hours. USC is waiting for you.
Yeah, and I do think, since we're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds here, I think
this is unprecedented.
Right. I think Oregon and Washington, UCLA and USC are probably at the end of the day, when it's all said and done at the end of conference play, going to have a pretty solid record at home against a lot of competition from the traditional Big Ten. And, we talk about this year's schedule and how it kind of lines up. Maybe got a little bit of a break from schedule makers. Obviously, I think Penn State is the only one to not have a protected rivalry with another school, which I think benefits. Yeah, right. That's a big benefit. And you look at last year's schedule, though. I mean, Penn State did have that huge gap where they went from Northwestern, who was a 1-win team the year prior, to having a bye, then UMass. And they really, after the whiteout, had almost 30 days to prepare for Ohio State, and we still got what we got. I mean, that was almost like a once-in-a-lifetime spot to get for the Buckeyes.
Don't remind me.
Now you don't get that, right? Now you get the opposite, right? You don't have the luxury of 30 days on campus to prepare for Ohio State, because you got to go from Southern California to Madison, Wisconsin, back home. So I think last year's schedule was more favorable for sure. I definitely agree on that.
Absolutely.
I know a lot of people will push back saying, what are you talking about? The former defending national champs aren't there on the schedule, and that's great. But I think the addition of the road trips and Camp Randall is underrated. I think Wisconsin's program right now isn't really getting much respect as they should.
They're trending up. They're trending up.
Because I feel like with Wisconsin every year during preseason magazine season, right, we get this phenomenon. Well, with Wisconsin, 11-1, or is this a program that's going to contend for a Big Ten championship? And the last couple of years, they just keep 7-5 and lowering the bar. But now is the time to buy low on a program like Wisconsin, because with Luke Fickell there, and also Wisconsin, I believe they have an interesting home schedule. They got Alabama, Oregon, and Penn State all coming in to Camp Randall. So you got to think they're going to win one of those, and you just have to hope
they're going to be battle tested. They're at least going to be battle tested.
Yeah, you just got to hope that they'll knock off Bama or Oregon and then get it out of their system, and then Penn State can go out there and have the same success they did in 2021. But yeah, it doesn't set up well. I'm with you on the Southern Cal game. That's one where if I'm taking the over 9.5, I'm pretty much chalking that one up as a loss, just knowing the history there. and I know this is a different team and a different era, but I've just seen no success for Penn State out there, other than the Rose Bowl against Utah. But when it comes to Southern Cal, I just have bad memories of 2016 and 2008. It just, it creeps back in, and it just seems like USC has Penn State's number out there. And I think when the first schedule came out before they changed everything, I'm pretty sure we had USC in Beaver Stadium.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I was fired up about that, because that's the swing game that you're going to need to have at home, because while they don't have an electric crowd, it's just impossible travel. It really is. Yep. So yeah, I'm gonna say I'm with you on USC. I hate that spot for us.
And then on top of that, you do have Wisconsin and Ohio State back-to-back with no bye week. So the toughest opponent on your schedule, like, there's no debating it. It is Ohio State. But then USC, I know there's a bye week wedged in there, but then Wisconsin on the road, and then Ohio State, and then Washington, right? All back-to-back to back-to-back. That's truly a gauntlet of a schedule, and you can't just circle Michigan and Ohio State anymore. You have this many opponents that can, I don't want to say surprise, but can deal, right, it's not a surprise anymore. They can deal you a loss at any time. Now, coming up on the show, we're going to talk about why Penn State would hypothetically lose those games outside of, tough timing, the environment, right? What is holding Penn State back? What also puts them in the caliber of being the third best team in the Big Ten, according to the odds and according to caliber on the roster. We'll discuss that on the other side of this break. And today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to its peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you are into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're going to be burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That is ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. So Penn State could finish at 10-2, which would be a good season with the kind of schedule that they have. That gets you into the college football playoff. Depending on how some things finish up in Big Ten play, they could be, with the no divisions, they could be the other rep in the Big Ten championship game and would most likely be facing Ohio State. But that's just it. Penn State is definitely second to Ohio State. You can debate, whether it's Oregon, whether it's Michigan, whether, maybe, hey, Washington, I know they're going through some changes. That's fine. I think there's going to be some takers for the likes of Wisconsin even. But then, and USC, but outside of that, right, Penn State is really in this upper tier of the Big Ten. I would put Ohio State by itself, and then Oregon and Penn State together, and then Michigan, because I don't know their quarterback situation, okay? Is it going to be Alex Orji? Is it going to be someone else? I know they're returning a lot of talent, but that turnover for Michigan is just tough for me to say, yes, they are going to be the second team in the Big Ten championship. It is Ohio State and everybody else until further notice. That's just frankly the conversation, but Penn State, if there's anything that's going to hold them back again, I think they take a step forward because the offense is going to improve. Andy Kotelnicki is better than Mike Yurcich, okay? Julian Fleming is better than Keandre Lambert-Smith for what he can give you, what he needs to give this team. But you are going to see a similar type of Penn State offense to last year. Okay, when I say that, people are going to think, oh, it's going to be garbage. Drew Aller is going to be right. The social media critics are going to be out in full force. And that's fine, but that's not what I mean. You're going to see a similar style because you can rely on this defense with the talent that you have. And Drew Aller is just going to play mistake-free football. You still have Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, right? The formula's still there. So you're going to deviate a little bit from it. You're going to get better because Kotelnicki's going to scheme some different things up. But let's be honest about what this offense is. Aside from Fleming, a trade of Fleming and KLS, how different is this offense? The offensive line's going to take a step back. That concerns me there. That's a big concern. But if you think we're going to get this big downfield passing game, again, the transfer portal just closed, right? Penn State didn't make these crazy changes to get these huge difference makers in the downfield passing game. It's still going to be short to intermediate stuff, protect the football, and allow Tom Allen's defense to force you turnovers and get you short fields. Penn State's still going to play ball control, but hopefully with a better mind calling plays.
Yeah, and I was watching a recent James Franklin interview from Blue White Weekend where he sat down with Adam Brenneman, or actually, I think it was Christian Hackenberg, actually, and talking
State
about
media.
talking to Hackenberg about what went into the hiring process here for OC and Andy Kotelnicki. And like, I always thought of this coming in to this season as, here we go again, right? Another Big 12 offensive coordinator, no defense in the league. That's going to be the headline. You know, is this really an upgrade from Yurcich? And I had my doubts because I don't have any faith in Big 12 defenses. I think they're one of the poorest conferences defensively. But I do like what James Franklin said when he was explaining to Christian about the hire. Finding a guy who has all your boxes checked, but one of those boxes being, did you have a generational quarterback who kind of inflated your career? And I was like taken aback. I was like, is that a shot at Mike Yurcich and maybe Franklin admitting a mistake that he may have made in that process when you consider Yurcich was the QB coach for Justin Fields, right? And at Ohio State, and he also coached Mason Rudolph at Oklahoma State, who, you know, people laugh at that now, but at the time,
good college quarterback.
Right. Mason Rudolph was the class of quarterbacks in college football. And then, yeah, like I said, he was in Columbus with Justin Fields. So when I heard that from Coach, I thought that was almost a direct criticism of his, you know, maybe where he went wrong when he looked at my
Can I add to that briefly, Matt? Because I think that's an important point. Let's also look at it this way. Penn State's top choice in this offensive coordinator cycle was Andy Kotelnicki. They were able to outbid everybody, basically out-recruit him, right? They have to pitch themselves to Andy Kotelnicki just as much as Kotelnicki would to Penn State, but Oklahoma was after him, right? So these were top-tier programs wanted Kotelnicki to be their next OC. Mike Yurcich was not Penn State's first choice. I can say that confidently from what we know now with the way that Pat Kraft operates versus the way that Sandy Barber operates. Okay, the athletic department is not afraid to invest the funds to go get that top tier candidate, no matter what the price tag is. And I cannot imagine, Mike Yurcich might have been a top 5, but I don't think James Franklin and Penn State, when they were making that offensive coordinator change a few years ago, that Mike Yurcich was, you know, like, hey, we got our guy. It's like, no, we got a guy, but we didn't get our guy.
Yeah, was it Sam Ehlinger at Texas that Yurcich coached too? Like thinking back through his career, I mean, some really good quarterbacks. And you think of Kotelnicki, I mean, outside of who's the kid from Kansas, Jalen Daniels. I can't name.
Yeah,
Jalen. Is that his name?
Yeah,
Jalen Daniels. I think it's Jalen Daniels. I can't really name one. I don't even know who Kansas
and he's been injured.
Have been. Right, so like
he's been injured. They used 3 quarterbacks the year before. And he made a walk-on look good, like he was capable of running the offense. So Penn State will take a step forward, but we need to understand they're still going to work within their means. They didn't go get a playmaker that can stretch the field. Are we really going to put that much faith and trust into Amari Evans? I think Amari Evans can do it, but he's still unproven. They flipped guys like Mekhi Flowers over. He was a former wide receiver, a good prospect out of high school, but that's high school. So are 2 guys who have not done it yet, are they going to take the college football world by storm? We saw one play against Michigan State where it's like, hey, we've been waiting for Amari Evans. Okay, but how many times? If he can do that maybe 5 or 6 more times, that is a win. But to expect him to do it 12, like 10, a dozen times plus in the season is just too much to ask. Again, let's be honest about what this Penn State offense is. They're going to protect the football. They're going to grind defenses down. And Drew Aller is really good at that. He's really good at protecting the football as much as social media wants to trash him.
Yeah, none of these receivers are Godwin, Hamilton, Dotson. No. I'm hoping one of them can be Parker Washington, though. I don't think that's too much to ask, right? I think
Right.
Parker was very underrated. I think people were ready to move on from Parker Washington and right into Keandre Lambert-Smith, thinking his ceiling was higher as wide receiver one, and we were wrong. I've been wrong on this receiving core. I thought, like Christian Driver was a guy who maybe could break out in this core. I thought Malik Mega someday could see his shining moments. And these are guys, obviously KLS, and these are guys who aren't even part of the program anymore. And now you're left with just a group of receivers, and we're wondering, like, Caden Saunders, 5-star, Trey Wallace, the coaching staff keeps talking about as having potential. But to me, I mean, I told you last year when we did our preview that I thought Theo Johnson was going to lead the team in receiving. And,
he's up there in touchdowns.
Yeah, here we go again. Asked me today, I think it's Tyler Warren. So I don't know. I'm not sold on Julian Fleming. For me, it's prove it. And I'm rooting for the kid, and I really hope he becomes a wide receiver one here. But for me, he's done nothing here. And I'm maybe a little different than most people on that, where I don't think he's the best receiver on this team.
In terms of a receiver, but what he can give you is that leadership that Dante Cephas and KLS were supposed to give Penn State, direction for that wide receiver room. That is present with Julian Fleming. And then the first or early criticisms of the team, like, hey, what's going on? The running game isn't as explosive. Well, Keandre Lambert-Smith, Dante Cephas, all those guys, and some of them are still on the roster, right, struggled with blocking in the running game. Julian Fleming was the second best graded blocker on Ohio State's roster last year. So at the very minimum, Fleming is going to check boxes that weren't there. That's why I mean this offense can take a step forward, but still just know what it is. Just know what it is. It's not going to be this downfield aggressive passing game. Tyler Warren's a great intermediate target. Julian Fleming's a great intermediate target. Trey Wallace is a great intermediate target. But that's until you get and Amari Evans has to break out. If this offense is going to take a step forward, or you're really going to have to get somebody, Caden Saunders, short to mid-range target, right? All of these guys are 5 to 15 yards, but that 20, 25 plus yards, you just don't have that until like you said, prove it. Amari Evans, prove it, because I think he can be that, but I don't know for sure on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I'm pretty high on Clifford too. I know Drew Aller has said
short range target.
Yeah, I do. I do think he'll get a lot of targets this season. But just offense as a whole. I mean, I think not a lot of people expected this run on offensive linemen that the NFL draft was going to have on Penn State, and like a lot of these guys, we had our complaints about over the years. I know Caden Wallace was kind of inconsistent and then came on towards the end of his career. He ends up a day 2 pick, and now you've got to replace 4 starters up front with only Sal Warner coming back, I believe.
Well, you have JB Nelson, who rotated in and out, but essentially 3 with Norzad, Fashanu, and Wallace, and the offensive line was a little bit okay, like they were above average last year. That concerns me. Okay, so now you need time. If you're going to have some downfield passes, you need time for those plays to develop. The offensive line, the offensive line is your biggest question mark. It's not the wide receivers anymore. It is the offensive line. Drew is not mobile per se, but he can move. But still, Bo Prabula is your mobile quarterback, right? So those are things that can hold Penn State back. But how about we talk about the strengths, Matt, on the other side of this break? So we'll come back with the strengths of this team that make them a 10-2 team. Get the criticisms out of the way, and then just kind of a state of the union where they are with NIL and everything that's gone on this offseason. That's coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's episode is also brought to you by Monopoly Go. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. And I know what you're saying, flag on the play. You've already talked about that, but there is just so much good stuff in the game that I have to tell you about. In Monopoly Go, you compete against your friends, but did you know you can also team up with them? You can team up with your friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes that you can unlock. And there's so much more to get. You get unique stickers that you can trade with your friends to complete albums for bigger prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games, for example, like digging for treasure. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and download Monopoly Go now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. So we just got done laying out all the criticisms of this Penn State team, but there are a lot of good things that, again, put them in title consideration, at least consideration, right? It's Ohio State's conference for this season, but Penn State will be right in the thick of it. So how about some strengths? Well, we mentioned I've kind of laid it out without directly saying it. The defense is a strength. They bolstered the secondary when that had a lot of question marks, especially after the Peach Bowl, the game against Ole Miss, because hey, this is the future of the secondary, and they're getting torched by really good players. Well, they go out and get AJ Harris. And AJ Harris has received rave reviews. Jalen Kimber is well-traveled. He's a veteran who's just going to provide an impact. You move Abdul Carter around. You still return tons of talent at the defensive line. I fully anticipate them to have one of the best run defenses in the entire country. Tom Allen is a defensive mastermind. It's just overshadowed by the fact that he had to run a dumpster fire of an Indiana program that would not embrace the transfer portal. You want to talk about Penn State with the portal and NIL. Indiana would not embrace that. So now Tom Allen can just coach football again. So Penn State's defense is going to be a strength. It's going to be a top 10 defense in the country. The run defense, I fully anticipate being one of the best in the country as well. And Abdul Carter moving to defensive end allows them to get that pass rush presence to still be there. While it won't be blitz happy exactly like Manny Diaz, it's still going to provide pressure. And again, just an offense that has a lot of talent. Singleton, Allen, Aller, Fleming is talented, right? Wallace. The only question mark I have is the offensive line. But if we're talking strengths, Penn State still has plenty of really good future NFL talent on this roster, and that's why they can be 10-2.
Yeah, I like everything you said there. Obviously, this is the year for Denai Dennis Sutton to potentially be Defensive Player of the Year, not just in the Big Ten, but possibly in the entire country. That's the kind of potential that he has. Your front seven is very solid. Tony Rojas is going to be the next Abdul Carter, the next Micah Parsons in this line of just extremely good, athletic, rangy linebackers. The secondary, we improved there, like you said, with AJ Harris. I think Zakee Wheatley is somebody that.
The same KJ Winston's a future first round pick.
Right. And you've got Jalen Reed back. So yeah, definitely the depth there in the front seven. I think secondary still has some things to prove. I know Cam Miller is going to be instrumental this year, is going to have to really step up and kind of get thrown right into the fire against some of these Big Ten receivers, especially the ones that Ohio State will be throwing out there. But yeah, no, defense, without a doubt. I'm all in on Tom Allen. I agree with you. It's very hard to be a football coach at a basketball school. I love the model of getting experienced head coaches to be your DC. I think we should never stop doing that. Yeah. It works. And yeah, I think Tom Allen can pick up right where Manny Diaz left off. I mean, you remember how close Indiana played Penn State last year as a 31.5-point underdog inside Beaver Stadium. And without that Drew Aller touchdown pass to KLS at the end of the game, that thing was getting way too close for comfort. From a cover perspective, if you look at the whole season last year, the games that Penn State lost, they were projected to lose. That one, they were 31.5-point favorite. They snuck out of there with a 5 to 6 point win at the last second. Probably from a spread perspective, one of the worst games. And I think that, along with some of the troubles that James Franklin has had with Tom Allen over the years, has kind of, led to this hire, and I have all the faith in Coach Allen. Yeah, I think defense is good. I agree with you on offense. Some questions there with the offensive line, and then special teams as well. That gets a little murky when you talk about
Big Ten.
Right, and how things went last year. So yeah, I would say I expect Penn State to be in a top defense, and I really got my eye on Denai Dennis Sutton to be the next first round pick, following in Chop Robinson's footsteps there on the D line.
I mean, but right, Abdul Carter can enter. Denai Dennis Sutton could enter. Kobe King, right? You're mentioning Tony Rojas for that breakout. I think Kobe King is the face of the linebacker group right now. If Abdul Carter's putting his hand in the dirt, right? KJ Winston's a future first-round pick. Zachy Wheatley, apparently the light bulb has finally turned on for him. I think people sleep on Jalen Reed, right? And this is all defense. This is all defense to go along with, again, what the offense is capable. Are they going to wow you left and right with, can they put a 50 bomb up on you? Yes, they can, but it's not because they have to, right? USC is going to have to try to outscore you and play fast-paced offense because the defense is going to hold you back. Penn State's offense, again, is going to be an extension of the defense where it protects the football. Again, I think Andy Kotelnicki's scheme helps, but just I want to be honest. I am not, since they didn't make all these wholesale changes, it's still at the base of it going to be similar with those differences sprinkled in from Kotelnicki. So again, we agree here that, hey, 10 wins is definitely attainable. That's not a bad thing. Losing to Ohio State is not a bad thing, but what can you do when you get to postseason time? So we'll start with the regular season as, things continue to trend forward. We'll expand on that. How do they do in a college football playoff, right? I think Penn State seems like they're expecting to host an early round playoff game because they, made that ordinance that, hey, a large scale event could happen here. So let's cancel some other events. So if that's an indicator, right? So hopefully they put their money where their mouth is in that case. And speaking of just that, NIL, Matt, I wanted to give you the opportunity because there's been so much conversation about NIL, viral posts about chicken baskets, right? Different, the retain the roar that's been initiated by Adam Brenneman, Christian Hackenberg, right? In conjunction with Happy Valley United, soliciting donations from the fan base, the largest alumni group in the world. I've given my stance on it that I think corporations really need to back this up, that if Penn State's going to compete with Columbus, Ann Arbor, Detroit, College Station, oil money, Texas A&M, it's going to take big business. The little guy supports you through parking passes, jersey sales, tickets, chicken basket, concessions,
beer. Sell
right?
More beer.
Yeah, but that's where you can't say donations are. I don't want to say donation. Hey, you have every right to say yes, as you do to say no. Okay, if you don't want to donate, don't donate. If you want to donate, donate. Okay, so let that be available. But I don't think we should be really criticizing anybody that says I can't donate to this program. I don't agree with it. I don't have the money. That's fine. But this is how you compete. Is Columbus is much bigger because it's a capital, right? Than State College. Business commerce is more readily available for Ohio State. That's just the fact of the matter. So if Penn State wants to compete with that, they need to talk to Terry Pagula and real estate companies, right? Which they are doing, but they need to do it more. That's my take on it. What's yours?
Right. Yeah, and you've seen some big development projects. I know one that I haven't really kept up with much recently was Ira Lubert trying to put in a casino in the Nittany Mall. That's another guy in Lubert that I think that's actually going to happen. No, the Bally's Casino going in the old
plans are there. Plans are there.
So right, you could see this is possible to bring this kind of thing in. I don't know too much about the ins and outs of donations. Like you said, I think you made really good points, but I think my big picture take on the whole thing, and I've kind of thought this for several years now, is that I'm just not sure if Penn State at this point, with their history, is built for long-term NIL success. And I say that because I feel like the obvious thing is Penn State has done something very differently than the rest of the blue bloods in college football. And whether you want to consider Penn State a blue blood or not, they are one. Yep. I think that even going back before the NIL era, there were things that James Franklin wanted to maintain from a culture standpoint, from an integrity standpoint. And I think he did a great job at doing that when everybody else was already doing NIL illegally. Penn State remained the standard of integrity in college football as far as paying players, scandals for recruiting, things like that. So I don't know. I feel like if James Franklin at the point in 2016 or 2017, when this program was really peaking, was at the point of, you can continue this momentum, but you have to start handing out McDonald's bags full of cash like they're doing at Alabama and Georgia, and start really diving into the shady practices that are going on in the rest of college football. Will you do that, and will you sell out to get this program a national championship? And I don't think that was ever, and you could hear it in James Franklin's voice in a lot of these interviews, that was never going to be the case. He was always going to wait until this was legalized to monetize this program. And I think because of that, it's going to, I just feel like this whole endeavor, NIL, and other things that are going on in college football with the Big Ten opening up, is having a negative effect on Penn State football. I think when you have a traditional program like this, the NCAA model almost benefited the program more. Now, I'm not saying we should ever go back to that. I love NIL. I think it's here to stay. But you've got to find ways to modernize Penn State, because it is true that a lot of the success that the Ohio State Buckeyes have had over the last 20 years was corruption, was greed, was a lot of shady stuff going on behind the scenes. And that's not just speculation. That is proven fact that there was some nonsense going on at that program and some of the other ones around the country. So I would rather be 9-3 or 10-2 than dip to the levels that Ohio State has in order to make this work. And I guarantee you, although NIL is legal now, they're still going about this the same way that they always have, and that's win at all costs. And I don't know if James Franklin is a win at all cost guy. There is still character, there's still integrity, and there's still a very important standard and core value that he holds himself to. And I believe that they're going about NIL the right way. And there's things that you can do, right? We're having a massive EA college football video game coming back now. That's how you have to find people through that game that, might not recognize your brand yet. And maybe we're just looking at the wrong, we're looking within our alumni base, but maybe it's more than that. Maybe some big money is out there that hasn't recognized Penn State yet and wants to get behind the program. And it's tough because we do have the biggest alumni base in the country, but who's going to be the big one to compete with Ohio State? And I don't know. I don't know if all this new landscape has necessarily benefited a traditional old school throwback program like Penn State.
And that'll do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. A great episode. I enjoyed it very much. And there's going to be an extension of this, of course, as the season gets closer. But this is just early thoughts of what Penn State would do in the 2024 season. Matty Fresh, you can check him out on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, for Springball Boulevard. Football truly never dies. He does incredible work over there and hosts seriously, it's a professional level show. If you like football outside of college and pro, it is still pro. If you like college outside of college in the NFL, you can check out his UFL show. Matt, thanks so much for the time, and can't wait to catch up again in the not too distant future.
Yep, 4 months to go until the season. We'll see you in Morgantown.